So my guest today is Steve Edwards. Steve is the CEO of Premier Virtual and an expert in the recruiting and job fair industry. He's been part of over 7,000 hiring events in the last 10 years as a candidate, organization, host, and empowering the software behind events. He's spoken to thousands of job seekers to help them find jobs. And his methods are a little crazy and a little bit different, but his goal is to help job seekers stick out the job search and the interview process. Steve, welcome. Thanks for making time today.
Jeff, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. Excited to talk about something I haven't talked about in a while. How to help these job seekers get jobs in the virtual world, right? The world's changed. It's not all in person anymore. You know, it's going back a little bit. Virtual's taking over.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about getting yourself ready for a presentation at a virtual job fair and how to present yourself and how to stand out. So maybe we can just start by talking about how should someone prepare for a virtual career fair so that they stand out and they can prepare like no one else so that they're not boring like all the other people are.
Yeah, you know, I look at this. When you're a job seeker, when you're sitting in a room at a job fair with everybody else, when you have your resume on a job board or you log into a virtual job fair, the people next to you are your competition. What are you going to do to be better from them? So that before the resume, before the job fair starts, you have to prepare for that. So we're really kind of talking about the virtual world, but a lot of the stuff can be simple, right? And I talked about this. I put on in-person job fairs for 10 years or 9 years before I got into the virtual world, and then, you know, developed my own software to be able to do that. But you got to prepare yourself, right? How do you prepare yourself? I know not everybody likes to be on camera. I'm a little crazy. I'm a little outgoing, but that's not everybody out there. But how do you prepare yourself? What are you wearing? What are you acting? What do you act like? Can you look in a mirror and give yourself a 30-second pitch of who I am, what I do, and why somebody should hire me? That's the first thing you need to be able to do. Because if you can't sell yourself, how are you going to sell somebody else? Even though you might be saying, Steve, I'm an accountant. I'm HR, I don't have to sell. In an interview, you're selling yourself.
And I'm going to interrupt you because you said something and I don't want it to get glossed over. And because you went right by it. It's how you look on camera too. So plus, how do you present against your backdrop? What are you wearing? How good is your camera in order to get clarity on camera? How can you make yourself pop vis-a-vis the backdrop? And we were talking before we started recording about the blur feature on Zoom and whether blur is a good way to do it or not. So lots of little things in terms of look at yourself. Yeah. How do you stand out visually too?
It's know what's behind you, right? You see what's behind me. It's my wife and my kids, right? That's the reason I personally work hard on a daily basis to give them a phenomenal life and work hard. And, you know, my kids know, like this morning, my son was like, Daddy, can you just stay home today? And I go, do you like your house? He goes, yeah. I go, do you like the pool? He goes, yeah. And I go, Gavin, tell him. Gavin's my youngest, who's 4. I go, Gavin, tell Tristan why I'm going to work. And he goes, Dad has to make money so we can live a good life, right? So I'm teaching that earlier. But reason I say that is that's my background, right? It's because you can have conversations. I listen to country music. I listen to hip hop, but I would never put a Metallica or a Tupac sign behind me because automatically people are going to judge you based on that. Maybe they're anti whatever's back. Don't have especially in college, right? You have a beer sign behind you or something that's not appropriate behind you. Know your surrounding, know what's behind you so they can see, right? Like there's glare on my camera, right? So if I go like this, you're going to see my camera that's there. And it all depends on the time of the day of where the glare comes from, right? Is it the glare from this side or is it the glare from this side? Know where you're at. Know that your audio works, right? If you're going to be on a phone, don't just expect to be on a phone like this because it's going to be shaky. Your hand is not steady. I don't care, right? Unless you're a sniper in the army, your hand isn't steady when you're holding your phone. So put it on a tripod, put something on there. So when you're looking at it, you're looking directly at it. You're not looking up, you're not looking down, you're looking right at it, right? You know, and if you have two screens, like right now, I'm looking at my screen, which I'm actually watching myself and I'm watching Jeff on here, but I'm not looking at the camera that's over here. Know what you're looking at, know your surroundings. Give the people respect when you're interviewing them. Looking away, looking down, saying, oh, I just got a text from my girlfriend in here, right? I hope my wife doesn't see that, right? That you don't want to have, right? That was a joke. I don't have a girlfriend, right? So, but that's the kind of things that people see, and we see that in interviews, right? And everybody's doing video interviews. So know what's around you. If you got a cat, a dog, a kid, or something like that, have them in another room. Okay. You know, try to go out. If your kid is sick and they're going to be coming in, just say, please, I have this interview, to not be there, you know? But know your surroundings when you're there. Don't do an interview at Starbucks, right? People walking behind you, right? It's not a good look, right? Yes, you can blur your camera out, right? But sometimes when you use those background features, all of a sudden there's issues with the camera. Know your surroundings, make sure there. So sorry, Jack, you got to that before I got to it, so that's good.
That's okay. So you were starting to talk about the interview preparation for doing video and how people should get ready. And like I said, you talked about what they wear and kind of went right by it. And I didn't want to let that one go so fast.
Yeah, I know.
So how should people get themselves ready for a video?
So there's two aspects that I like to talk about getting ready for virtual. So the first I'm going to talk about is getting ready for a virtual job fair or a virtual, we'll call it hiring event. The second is the actual interview that you're getting ready for, okay? And there's a reason I break those up into. Some of the things are exactly the same. So if I'm going to a virtual job fair, the first thing that I want to be able to do is I want my profile complete. So name, email address, phone number, not all my competition has where you can put their experience in, but we give it to candidates because we want you to show who you are, not just a piece of paper, right? Resumes, I won't get into what I think of resumes, but a resume is a piece of paper that you just put words on, right? But your experience that you can put in a profile, fill out the whole profile. I personally like pictures, and I know some people don't like pictures because of D&I, and they want to stay away from that, and I get it. But they're gonna see somebody regardless. You're gonna have there. But if I go into a job fair, if I go in and I have everything filled out, it shows I care, right? It's the same thing as job seeker. If you're looking at a company and company A has their company name, their website, and that's it, and the other company has their name, their website, a logo, all of their social media, they prepare. You're gonna be like, wow, this one's more interesting because I can see more, right? It's the same thing as you as a job seeker is prepare yourself, right? And then getting ready because most of these virtual job fairs now, it goes right into a video. You're gonna chat, okay? Now, when you're chatting, a question not to ask, if the company has their jobs listed in there, and let's just say the job's an accounting job, don't go into the chat and say, what jobs do you have? Because it shows the jobs. So you could say, hey, I see you have some accounting jobs. I'm looking for an HR job. Do you have any HR jobs as well? Right? Say what it is that you saw and then ask that question, right? Can you tell me a little bit about your company? It shows that you just went in, you didn't read, you didn't look, you didn't prepare. Right? Because if somebody comes into me and asks me what jobs I have, and I have all my jobs listed, and the next person comes in and says something specifically about a job, I'm going to talk to the person who's specific about a job. right? Because I'm going to show I care. But I can also on my platform is I can look at a candidate, I can see their profile, I can see their experience, I can watch their video resume, their video interview that they put on there. I can watch their see, the questions that were asked to them. I can see all that and get that. That's why I say you have the full profile that's there. And again, knowing your surroundings, knowing it's there. Now,
So I'm going to pause you here for 1 second because I want to make sure the audience gets some clarity here. So I know your profile, your job fair service, your virtual fair service. There's the opportunity to complete a profile in advance. You can see the jobs that the firms have in advance. Is that a common feature for other services as well, or unique to yours?
It's not unique to ours, but it really depends on call it the host of the event. Is if they want, when do they want to connect the job seekers and employers? Some of it open it a week before so they can see all the jobs. But a lot of times, especially we'll call it job fair companies, they don't open it before. It opens at 10 a.m. That job seeker can log in at 10 a.m. and that's the first time they see the jobs in the companies. Why do they do that? Because if they don't have a lot of companies in there, they don't want a candidate to come in the day before, look at ABC Mortgage, say, oh, they're hiring. I'm going to go directly to ABC Mortgage. I'm not going to log back in on the day of the job fair. So it's kind of, I'll say 50-50 of, companies. We're seeing it more where the companies are opening it early, let's say at 24 hours before, where a candidate can log in, because a candidate can log in, they can see the jobs, mark the jobs that they're interested in, leave notes about the company, and then go back in on the day of the job fair and say, okay, these out of these, 100 companies, these are
my firms, for example.
These are my, well, they can rank them. So these are my 5s that I want to go after. We did a job fair that had 1,700 companies in it. Largest ever job fair in history. And it's set up so it's efficient. When I tell somebody 1,700 companies, like, how do I get through 1,700 companies? We don't have to, because it's all based on categories. If I'm looking for sales companies in Boston, I would click on Boston and sales. And now just that list of 30 companies comes up. So I can go in and just see those 30 companies that are going to be in there. So again, we make it very easy, very efficient for them, but kind of know what you want, know what you're looking for as well. I see that so many times, and it's another thing to talk about right on the chat before we get into the video is, if you go into somebody's virtual hiring room and they say, do you have any questions? And you just blow them off, it's kind of rude. I like to say, no, it's just not really something I'm looking for, right? Better be prepared as a candidate is there. Out of everything out there, and people hate that I say this, but I will say this, and I've said it for years, and I've made a lot of people mad. The people that hop jobs more than anybody out there are recruiters. And guess what? If you tick off a recruiter at one company and they go to another company and they remember that you were rude to them, guess what? It's not gonna be there. Happened to me. I had a guy who was so rude to me one time about a job fair. And the guy was acting like he was somebody else, that he was too good for a job fair. And guess what? 3 months later, he reached out to me. Hey, I'm looking for a job. Do you have anything in this? Can you connect with the recruiter? I go, nope. I go, here's the message that you sent me before, and you were so rude to me, I would never help you find a job. Now, some of you could say, why wouldn't you give another chance? People don't think like that. A lot of people are really just too rude. I've helped people that were, that were rude to me before, but
there's a line that each of us establish.
Line, yes, yeah. I like that, right? That's the right way. But now let's get into the video, okay? So if I'm at a job fair, okay, and I have it here. Now, I wear the Premier Virtual Polo every day to the office. I wear a polo. If I ever have, if I'm on a call and I see other people are in suits and I'm underdressed, I have 2 shirts and a tie that's right over there that I can see, walk over, put those on, and then turn on my camera. So I kind of know my surroundings. I know what I have, but I'm prepared. It's the same thing at a virtual job fair. If somebody says, hey, do you want to, jump on a camera? You don't have to be wearing your suit and tie the whole time, or, your dress jacket. Have it sitting next to you. And then as soon as somebody comes in and says, hey, I want to, are you available for a video interview? And you could say, yes, just give me 1 minute. Change, put everything on. Now you're looking sharp.
So you can see them before they can see you.
Mm-hmm.
Typically.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, you're going is you're going to see them, right? They always say, right, in interviews is dress, 1 to 2 levels above what you're interviewing for. I went and I for the longest time, I wore jeans, polos, and loafers. And I would go to all of these events and and then I got asked to speak on a panel one time. And it was a local congressman and 2 other CEOs. And I was there and I look over and I'm like, I will never, because I believe, right, I like, to dress nice. I go, I will never be overdressed again. So now, and I go to conferences or anything like that, now I'm dressed and I go a little bit over, right? Last week I was speaking at an event and I had the tie and the suit on. And I was the only one in a tie out of the entire group of panelists, because I was right there. So practice this. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is the interview. When I'm going to interview with you, so I'm going to interview with Jeff for Jeff's position that he's hiring for. Still, if it's going to be a Zoom interview, you're still doing all the same thing, right? You know your background, you know what's around. But the thing that you need to do before that is you need to research the company, okay? Now, this is where a lot of people think, Steve, you really are nuts and you've really gone off the deep end. But you want to have a minimum of 15 to 20 questions ready for that interview.
15 to 20 questions?
Yeah. And here's why, right? That's a question most candidates think, right? Because what do we get taught, right? When I used to ask that in my in-person events, and they're always like 3, and then you get the people that said 1, who I used to be that guy, right? I'd go to an interview, and I haven't interviewed a ton in my life, luckily. But at the end of the interview, I was like, do you have any questions? Just 1. Why are you wasting your time? I'm like, what do you mean? Well, why are you wasting your time interviewing anybody else? I'm the best here for it, right? Wrong. Now, granted, the positions I was interviewing for that worked, and I got the job, but it wasn't the right thing to do, right? So I learned over time, but you want to prepare, because if I'm going to work for a company, and let's say I'm going to work for Jeff and his company, I'm going to research his company. I'm going to find out everything I can. I'm going to go to LinkedIn. I'm going to find out about Jeff. I'm going to say, Jeff, do you have any questions? They're going to tell me yes. But here's the thing is I'm going to walk into that page. The last interview I ever went on, which I think was 15 years ago, I went in and I had 3 pages of questions. I asked every question about the person I was interviewing as well as the company.
Give us some examples of questions that people should ask.
So, when you go in is, one, I love a question is, why did you switch from this company to that company, right? Can you tell me a little bit about, the culture, right? I love a culture question, just to kind of see, what they have, right? Is this right now, right? An important question is this in person, remote, or hybrid? Right? Because I think right now that is a huge question out there. I know this isn't on this, right? But I just spoke about this at a conference, the Great Resignation versus the Great Return, right? As people they're forcing people to come back to work, more people are quitting, right? Who's going to win this battle that's on there? But you can ask those questions. But here's the thing is when you're in there and you're now sitting in an interview, you're having a question, and that person, right? The person's interviewing you, right? I have my pen in, I got my notes out open. They tell you something, you're like, oh, that's great. That's one of the questions that I have. And you write the answer, right? You look away, you go away from their eyes and you look down. Next one, you do the same thing. Oh, yep, that was another question. So at the end, do you have any questions? You know what? I did have, I had a couple of questions here. Here was one question that I had, and here was the answer that you gave me. Right? Another one. Here was a question that it had, and here was the answer that you gave me, right? It showed that you prepare, right? If you prepare, you care. So you want to make sure that you're preparing for this. And then you get through, you're never going to get through 15 to 20 questions, but you're going to go through the couple that they answered. And then you're going to go into, a couple other things. I'm a huge fan of, again, this kind of goes back into the forward when you ask the questions is my first question that I love to tell people to do is when you walk in to that interview room, you look them in the eye, you shake their hand, you say, you know what, Jeff, I am so excited to be here today. What was it about my resume that you saw that you wanted to bring me in for an interview? You flip the script on them immediately and you try to take control of that interview. A lot of people can't do that, right? There's not, right? It takes a special kind of person and a special kind of execution on doing that. But you can show them, right? I'm excited to be here, right? I'm so excited. Even if you're nervous, right? There's a lot of people that don't take pressure well, especially if it's a group interview. But you could still say, hey, you know what? I'm excited to be here today.
I'm going to pause you here because I have a slightly different take on that first part of the conversation. Because to me, you may have seen a job description and you may have seen something on the system about the position that they're looking for. But one thing HR people have told me time and again, job descriptions are maybe 80% accurate. And when I make that comment to them, they always laugh and say, if we're lucky. So you just want to start off by confirming what it is that they're looking for too. And my way of doing it is to say, hey, thanks so much for reaching out to me. I really appreciate it. Or making time to talk with me today. I saw the position you had listed here, but I want to get your take on the role. Could you tell me about the job as you see it and what I can do to help? Because normally you'll ask that question at the end of the interview where it's too late to do anything with the information that you get because they've already decided whether they're going to interview you any further. So I believe you do that at the very beginning of the interview so you can start connecting the dots for them with every question that you ask them, that they ask you, and make it easy for them to see how you fit the role. So a slightly different approach. They both work, but
yeah. And I think, for a lot of people, your approach is going to work a lot better than my approach, right? There's a lot of people my approach will work for, but you're right? So many things about job descriptions. In talking about job descriptions, I'm going to talk about resumes for a second. Okay. So, I'm prefacing, I am not telling you to lie on your resume. Okay. So if I'm looking at a company's job description and I look at what I've done and it's the same thing in different words, right? Tomato, I'm going to change my resume a little bit. Okay. And I'm going to give this example that I had a client of mine, large fintech company. And, they never really used outsourced people. They got a new VP came in and she had worked with me for a long time, loved me. They brought me in, right? I was one of the first outside recruiters that they ever brought into the firm. And I'm there and I'm with a young manager, only been a manager for a couple of years. And I sent over, I'm like, I got the perfect candidate for you. And they looked at it and they're like, terrible resume. Like the guy kind of berated me a little about why would I waste the time sending that resume over to him? And I go, did you read the resume? He goes, yeah, they were an account manager and that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for an account executive. And I go, I'm going to ask you again, did you read the resume? And he goes, I didn't have to. It said account manager. I go, here's what I'm going to do. I said, before I go to your boss and let him know how you're treating me, I want you to read that resume again and then tell me what you think. And he goes, okay, read the resume and goes, wow, this is exactly what we're looking for. But this says account manager and in our account manager is something different. I go, you need to realize it's not just your company and what you call somebody. Different companies call the same position something different. And you have to look at that. And I say that because this guy was so blinded by the title that he wouldn't read anything else. But if that person, right, and again, we were fairly new with working for them, and if you would have, I'm not going to tell them to change their name to account manager. I would never tell them to change the title on there, but it was the job description was perfect. So if you look at what they're looking for, right, and it's just a couple words that are different, you can make those, right, make it a little bit more similar so that it matches. I won't get into my keyword searches and what I believe about ATS is, but you can make it similar to what they're looking for.
I agree, because you have to remember, folks, it's like a 6-year-old with ADHD who's looking at the resume. They've got a ton of them in their inbox. They're plowing through. They're looking for anything that vaguely fits what they're looking for. And then they prefer not to see vaguely fits. They actually want to see real close on the fit. So make it easy for them. The more they have to work, the less likely they are to talk to you. Now, I want you to remember, we've got a time limit today. We're not going to go to an hour conversation today. So
all right,
what should we be covering in order to get people prepared for the video fair?
So again, know your surroundings. You can practice. We live in a world where you have access to video all the time, right? So practice your video, practice your 30-second pitch. So that, I used to have my pitch, right? It was, hey, my name's Steve Edwards from Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. You probably never heard of Chippewa Falls unless you're at Atlantic Cooper's Beer or Titanic. But I left there because it's way too cold. I went to the Army, moved to college for South Florida, and now here I am, right? Know your 30-second opener, right? Who you are, what you do, maybe why somebody should hire you, find that stuff, right? Also, when you're preparing for this interview, if you know who you're interviewing with, again, look them up on LinkedIn. Social, it's all social, right? I won't get into Facebook and stuff like that to find out more about them. But look them up on LinkedIn, find a little bit about them, see if there's common ground. I mean, when I look at a resume, I look for common ground to see, can I have a conversation, put it down and say, tell me a little bit about you that's not on here. I can read this. So do the same thing, find out, prepare for your interview, prepare your camera, make sure that everything is working right, and you're good to go.
And I'll also remind you, if this is a video interview rather than, a virtual fair, for example, I want you there a minute or two early so that you're waiting for them rather than the other way around. When they're waiting for you, they're going, is she going to show up? He going to show up? Because you're late.
Yeah, great. And that's a great point. So I'm not a Teams fan, right? Everybody who works with me knows, sometimes they'll send me a Teams meeting just to be funny. But I know if I go Teams, I got to log in at least 5 minutes early because I have more issues logging in on Teams than I do on Zoom, and knowing the systems, knowing that you're there, or every once in a while you'll get a WebEx meeting and then you got to download something. So, know what it is, right? Check in the day before, right? If it's a Zoom link, just click on it the day before. Make sure you don't have a Zoom update, a Microsoft update, or your computer is not going to be updating. If you haven't been on your computer in, a month and you're getting ready to go to a virtual job fair or an online interview, open your computer the day before. Make sure there's no updates and that, you don't just try to log in and say, okay, it's at 3:00. I'm going to log in at, 2:55.
Surprises for you are never good. All that happens is you start to stress out, perspire, worry, and that's not the best way to start the conversation. Because, folks, I'll tell you from having interviewed thousands of people, the first few minutes of every interview are when people decide whether or not to pay attention to anything else. So you got to be ready. You got to be on your game, and you can't be stressed when you start off. And by the way, Steve, what else should we cover today that we really should?
I think we covered a lot today. Is getting them ready, preparing before, I think is such a key part to anything. I've had people that have researched companies and realized this isn't a good fit for me. And they cancel the interviews. Don't no-show an interview. It's pretty rude. But prepare before, research the company, know what you're doing, don't ever go into an interview and not have questions. I mean, I look at, I'll use myself as an example. Granted, I was a lot younger then, and I was a little bit, newer on the management side. But I remember one time a person came in, and he was a little older than I was. And he's like, I should be your boss, right? I know everything. I don't need to sell to be a manager. And I was like, great, here's a pen, whiteboard behind me, train me on how to sell this product. But I don't know how to sell a product. Well, how can you train somebody if you don't know how to sell it, right? But what that is he was saying, right, he was trying to be cocky and better. Don't ever do that, right? You don't want to be cocky in the interviews, right? If you're really that good, say, here are my certificates. Like when I go to an interview, right? Again, I would say, okay, well, here are my certificates where I was the top rep here. Here's this certificate. Here's this award. Here's this, because then they can show them because people can see those. I'm very visual and I like that aspect. And don't not have questions, right? Somebody else in that same time frame of me, do you have any questions? Nope. And I'm like, you just wasted 30 minutes of my time. You have no questions. I put my feet up on the desk and I'm like, all right, we can either sit here, you can figure out 3 questions to ask me, or you can leave, right? And not get the job. Because they didn't prepare. They didn't care. They just thought, oh, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to be cocky and get the job. And I don't care what type of person, what type of job it is. If you don't prepare for me, I have, a lot of people, it's a big turnoff. So have questions, and don't just have the, when do I start? How much do I make? Right? Have some thoughtful questions. Show that you actually went to their website. You learned a little bit about their company, and talk about it. So.
And one thing I'll encourage you folks to do in your preparation is ask yourself, based upon this job description or job ad, if you were them trying to figure out if you were qualified to do this job, what would you ask in order to figure that out? And that's going to help you really prepare at an even better level to deliver the goods for them.
Yeah. Why you? Right? And think about that. Why should they take you? And I don't care if it's flipping fries at McDonald's. Why should they take you over that other person that's out there? Why should they take you, right, with the same credentials, the same type of degree for an accounting position? Why should they take you? And that's what you need to know. If you can't tell yourself that, how can you tell a potential employer?
Perfect. Steve, this has been great. How can people find out more about you? Premier, show them the logo.
Go right here. Here we go. There we go. Wait, where am I at over here? All right. Premier Virtual. You can go to our website, premiervirtual.com. It's there. There's actually some stuff for job seekers. We're building an entire new platform right now so the job seekers can come in and then get notified of when events are going to be. It's kind of right in the process. When we originally built our platform, we were a host first platform so that, organizations could host their events. But now we're getting a lot of people that are coming to us and saying, hey, we're a job seeker, right? We're looking, and they want us to help them market to get more people into the event. So, check out the website, Premier Virtual. You can put that you're a job seeker in there. And, as we start marketing it out to other candidates, you can be on the list.
Beautiful. Steve, thank you. By the way, this is the second time we had to do this interview. Something on my end screwed up.
Jeff just liked talking to me. It's out here. We're giving good information to you guys. We have good chemistry.
Yes, we do. And folks, we'll be back soon with more. I'm Jeff Altman. Visit my website, thebiggamehunter.us. There is a ton in the blog that you can watch, listen to, or read that will help you. In addition, you can find out about my courses, which you can rent or buy, my books and guides. You can schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule time for coaching. I want to help you. And if this isn't the right time, just put that address in your phone, thebiggamehunter.us, and in the notes field, put the phrase job search blog so you can come back to it on a later occasion. Lastly, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/thebiggamehunter. Have a terrific day, and most importantly, be great. Take care.